Welcome to my show, Cat Unmuted, and I am Cat. If you like what I talk about, feel free to like and subscribe my show and this video, or other videos, or all videos. Anyway, um, last episode we talked about pain tolerance. Um, this episode I decided to talk about emotional pain. We all go through a certain amount of emotional pains, some less, some a lot, and some too much. And there is some conditioning that you can do for these things as well. Or not that you can do it, but like um, uh, there's a conditioning portion that's in play here, like everything else. The body remembers, but the body also knows that it can learn resilience. You just have to believe it, right? Um, in my case, and a lot of what I see in my clients, um, we naturally tend to want to avoid emotional pain. And so our brains have, every time we go through a painful experience emotionally, also physically, but in this case, we're talking about emotional pain, um, our bodies or our brains might completely cut off the emotional portion from the physical experiences that we're going through. So in my case, I found out, I didn't find this out until I saw that hypnotherapist that was also a psychologist. And he helped me recognize that I had completely dissociated myself from my past. So I always thought I had gotten over my past and that I was healed, but because I was able to talk about it without crying and having any kind of emotional like outcome, right? But it turns out my brain had severed my emotions from my past. So I was able to talk about them without any of that in my way. Um, I did have an interesting experience once, though, before I started seeing this hypnotherapist or psychologist. I had, so in my work as a massage therapist, with things that, I talk about with my clients because a lot of the things that happen in the body are connected to our physical experiences and emotional experiences. So, um, I would bring up my past a lot to show them, to give them an idea of what I'm talking about, because I have issues in my body and I know that it was connected to some of my past. And one of them, I bring up a lot about how I got silenced when I was a kid, and this is where my being caught in a lie that I didn't tell comes. So what happened was my stepmother had uh, done horrible things in like in the house. Domestic. It wasn't necessarily domestic violence, but she was not nice, and um, but she was charming outside. So I was a teenager at the time. So the only thing I could do was vent to my friends because I didn't have the option to move out. I didn't have the option to save myself, so to speak. I was stuck in the house because, I mean, I was in what, middle school, high school? It happened in both. Um, at the time when this started, I was still in middle school. And yeah, so I didn't have a place to go. the only thing I could do was go to my friends and vent, complain, get it off my chest and just verbalize things. And that's what I did with my friends. But one day, one of them had the opportunity to meet my stepmother. And this happened, I want to say this happened when I was in high school. Yeah, because none of my friends really saw my stepmother. I can't remember what the situation was and who actually met my stepmother. I only remember the feeling I had. I don't remember who it was. Anywho, actually, I think I do remember. Oh, that's not important. The important thing is, I have been telling this one friend about her, and she got to meet my stepmother. And once she spoke, got to know her a little bit, and this was just in the span of like maybe 30 minutes, probably less. We were hanging out one day, and she said, Kat, it's not that I don't believe you, but I just can't see her doing all these horrible things. So, right at that moment, even though we stayed friends, right at that moment, I knew I lost a friend because I can't tell her anything about what happened anymore because she's probably not going to believe me any longer. So, I have lost a friend. I have lost my voice because I can't talk to her. And now I have also been labeled a liar. Even though she said I wasn't a liar, it doesn't matter because she no longer believes me. So that is the reason for my fear of uh, talking. Stage fright, imposter syndrome, whatever else there is to name it, label it. Um, and I have uh, uh, like during that time, that's what happened. But later on in my, as I was getting older, my next big thing that happened was, um, there's so many things, but I think I'm just going to choose one because there are a couple that I talked about a lot with my clients. And the second thing was that I was sexually assaulted by this guy that I knew for an hour, I think. Um, and I think in combination with everything that happened, has made me get quieter and quieter and quieter. And the more quiet I got, obviously the emotional distress became more. But also there was like other things that piled up on top of it, right? So the emotional pain was so tremendous to me that at some point, it may not have been that exact moment, but at some point, my emotions got severed from all those memories. And who knows when it happened. It could have been at that very time. Like I said, it may not be, who knows. But the point is, it happened at some point, if not at that time. And um, and I found out about it with this hypnotherapist. I opened so many cans of worms with that therapist, and it did a lot of good. Because now I know for a fact what is going on in my head and in my heart, and understanding that going farther into the future, when I had my miscarriage, I was able to write a book because I was fully intact with my emotions when that happened. Um, in the book, I do mention that I was numb for longer than I wanted to longer than what I wanted to feel that numbness, but it was almost a physical numbness. And this was my brain trying to protect me from that experience because it was physically excruciating pain. It was a physically painful experience, excruciating. But it was also an excruciating emotional pain as well. And I felt like I was emotionally numb, like I felt, and physically numb, and like I could still feel things, but like, um, it, it's hard to explain. I was so numb. I felt soulless. I felt like I had lost my soul. It wasn't just the emotions that I stopped feeling. It was like whatever touch, it's hard to explain, but I felt like whatever, like physical feeling that I felt wasn't necessarily connected to me anymore. Somehow my brain was able to sever that from whatever, my body, even though I'm feeling the physical feeling with my body. It's hard to explain. Whatever the case is, that those are the kinds of things that I had experienced, and obviously the physical or the miscarriage happened later on, so I didn't really get to use that as an example with my clients, but the other stuff I did, and uh, watching and working on clients who have a past, right? Um, they all they kind of talk about it, but oh, I was about to get to so I forgot about one thing I was trying to get to. I was telling you about my little past because I had an interesting experience going back to my original point. Um, I was so the way I gained clients was by vending at events, and the wine festivals was one of the places I went to, and I always, actually, every event, not just the wine festivals, I always got clients out of them. But obviously, while it involved me to get out there and talk to people. And one day, again, up until this point, this is pre-pandemic, so I haven't talked to the therapist yet, and I thought I had gotten over my past, and so never cried about it, never anything. So I thought I was good, right? Well, with the past, I was talking to these two girls who were friends, and we were talking about emotional resilience. And I was like, yeah, I went through, I was, SA'd in the past. Um, and I was telling them about how, uh, like, I can't remember exactly what I said, but it had something to do with emotional pain, resilience, and all this stuff. And that as a massage therapist, I could help people like through their emotional pain when things like that happen as well. So I was explaining that, and they were like, "Yeah, we know that feeling because they've been SA'd as well." But while I was talking about this, and this is again pre-pandemic, so I was already like, it wasn't that long ago. I was what, uh, uh, 38, 39 when I was having this conversation, and all the shit that happened in my past, that was like middle school, high school, and very early 20s, right? So that was a long time ago. And this was the first time. I actually shed tears. I wasn't crying. I wasn't crying at all. Like I wasn't sobbing. I was nothing. My tears just started. The waterworks started with no emotions attached to it. That was my body crying for help, and I had no idea. I was like, why the fuck am I crying? Like, never cried about this before, like I've always been able to talk about it without the waterworks, so I should be fine, right? But remembering that experience and seeing my therapist and visiting that part of my life made me finally realize that my body knew I needed help and it was crying for help that very moment. Somehow it happened that very moment. Who knows why? But for the first time, that was the only time and the first time that my body showed any kind of help me moment. So that was interesting. But going back to my original point, I had bottled it down. And who knew I did that? I had no idea I bottled it down. I had no idea I let my brain sever off all these emotions that was attached to that, but somehow it welled up a little bit that day. And after I saw the therapist and did my the I did all kinds of work after that, like deep emotional work. Before the thought of it, I was like, nah, who needs that, right? But once I figured it, I found out about that through my therapist. Somehow, like, there was a part of me that was a little bit afraid, but also I knew that I could overcome. And with that little bit of positivity, I was able to get through everything that I have learned about me and built a stronger resiliency, if that makes sense. So after I wrote my miscarriage book and I had given some of those to my friends because some of them were a big part of it. One of them said, I can't, reading your book made me cry. I couldn't read through it all because I was crying so much. I thought, I didn't know I was still holding on to a lot of emotions and um, something about how she realizes that there's a lot more that she has to work through. In all reality, the thing is, memories are memories, and they're stored in our brains, in our bodies, and in our emotions. So when you trigger something, the memory is going to come back whether you like it or not. Um, like, it's like having the happy memories. You smell something. Let's say you smell something that brought you back to childhood, something that your mom used to make all the time, your favorite dish. And whenever she made it, you know immediately because of that smell. And when you smell it in adulthood, those memories come back. The happiness that you felt, the excitement, the love from your mother, right? When it comes to trauma, it's the same thing. They're just memories. And so I started understanding that after I saw my therapist. And one of the things I challenge myself to do is whenever I find something uncomfortable because of my trauma memories, I went towards it and I would challenge myself to go through it. And if I cried, I cried. If I didn't, I didn't, whatever. But I wouldn't hold it all in either. Like, And usually, whenever go through these things, I'm probably with my husband. I would tell my husband that I might cry, but it's literally just my emotions happening. But I need to move through this so I can get used to these emotions because they are a part of me. I cannot ignore this. So unknowingly, I went down the path of conditioning myself to get used to any emotions that popped up. And I learned how to deal with them, those emotions, without ignoring them, without bottling it back up. So when I had my miscarriage, and this is like the last thing I did for me to condition myself, since I understand how conditioning works now, right? I, before I had the miscarriage, I had a friend who got pregnant before I did. And we, like just about a month before I got pregnant, and we both signed up for a prenatal yoga class. Prenatal yoga class? I can't remember what it was called. It doesn't matter. It's a yoga class for pregnant women. That's what it was. And a week before the class started was when I had the miscarriage. And so my friend texted me, if you don't want to go, you don't have to. And I told her, I was like, I'm going to bump into so many pregnant women from now on. Like, I think this will be good for me to keep. So, but just to make sure that I'm not going in there keeping this a secret, I emailed the instructor. I was like, just a heads up, I had a miscarriage, but I still want to take these classes. And I just want you to know that this happened and I might get emotional. I don't know. And she did email back with her condolences, and she said that, like, things happen and she would be more than happy to reimburse me. But I told her, no, I'm doing this. I am doing this. So I went, and somehow, because I have put myself in a position where I knew there was going to be nothing but pregnant women around me, and like, I didn't want to be sad. I decided before I went there, I am going to be happy for all these women who still have their babies inside them. I'm going to be happy for them because that's what I would have wanted for me. So that's the mentality I went in there with. And I shed maybe 5 tears because I was still sad for me, but made sure I was happy for them. So I did cry a little bit while we were doing yoga. It was a bit of an emotional work for me. But I also had the wonder, like watching the other women, kind of like living through them a little bit. But I didn't let that get to me too much because reality is I'm not having it now. I might later, who knows? But for right now, that it is not my time. And I decided that I was going to trust the life force. Either I'll never have babies, or this is just not my time. But in all reality, the truth is that it is not up to me to make that decision. So, forgot what uh, my point is with this, but because of the conditioning I had done emotionally, to understand that triggers are little things will always trigger you. So how do you deal with that? I learned to understand triggers are going to be there. And if I get triggered, it is not anybody's problem but mine. So I learned to, if I'm out and about and nobody needs to know I'm sad when I get triggered, I will keep it in for a little bit because it's not their situation to deal with. So I'll go home and then I'll let myself feel it again. And I'll let myself cry about it. I'll let myself do all these things. If I'm surrounded by friends, I'll let them know and cry about it and feel into it. But other than that, um, it really depends on who I'm surrounded with. But I have conditioned myself to not block, ignore, bottle it up, or even run away from any feeling that pops up anymore. And I can understand how that can be really scary, but it's actually really liberating. And at first, it was a bit of a scary experience for me, but I think there was a little bit of hope in there that I knew I'd be able to learn how to live with it and deal with it in a healthy way. And that kind of took the scariness away some. Yeah. Um, I don't know what else I can say about all of this, but I will end it with this thought that I know there's a lot of people who go through painful, much more painful things than I did that could cause them to freak out whenever they revisit a memory and freak out to the point where they might pass out, for example. If you're able to condition yourself with the small things, like a breakup or a friend stabbed you in the back, like those are kind of minor compared to like domestic violence type shit. But if you're able to condition yourself to deal with the smaller things like those and work your way up to that, I think there's hope. So if you do try to start conditioning yourself with these things, start small, not the big stuff, because you don't want to freak your system out, because your system is conditioned to know to not do these things because it's trying to keep you safe. So start small. Anyway, hope you liked what I talked about today. Like and share my show and this video if you liked what I shared. I already said that. Anyway, I'll see you next week.